Once waivers have run, are there any players worth stashing and looking ahead to beat the competition before they become hot pickups? Well, I'm about to let you know. Welcome back to the Fantasy Endgame. I'm Pierre, here to help you again with waiver wire advice. We're heading into week 5, but this time we're going to look ahead. We're going to try to beat the breakout and grab those players before they become hot commodities on the waiver wire. So you've already checked out my picks for week 5. But let's look now beyond that. So a guy that is getting kind of some buzz now in Buffalo is Khalil Shakir. He's a rookie. This is a guy who hasn't really gotten much run because, of course, Buffalo already a pretty deep offense. But now all of a sudden they're not, because we know Gabe Davis has been limited. He did miss one game. He did play last week, but he just doesn't look like himself. And so here's the thing. They also have Jamison Crowder playing the slot. Well, he just broke his ankle. He's going to be out a while. And then Isaiah McKenzie, who had been stepping up and playing pretty well, he is in the concussion protocol, might not play for week 5. We really don't know. Could miss more time beyond that. So all of a sudden, this Buffalo receiving core is actually looking kind of thin. Well, maybe there's room for Shakir to step in. And I didn't mention him on my waiver wire pickups for this week because I don't see him stepping in and having an immediate role. Like, even if you do pick him up, you can't just put him in your lineup, right? This is not a guy that we can assume is just going to get targeted, right? He's a rookie, needs to develop some rapport. He had 2 catches for 23 yards last week. I mean, that at least shows that he's done something, but you know what? We're going to have to probably take the slow wait and see approach on him. But this is a decent stash because, again, obviously in a potent offense, got Josh Allen thrown to him, and if these receivers like McKenzie or Davis are forced to miss more time, then all of a sudden Shakir might be thrust into a lot more important role than we think. My concern with him is what we've seen. Again, remember Brian Daboll, the kind of mastermind behind this offense, is now head coach for the Giants. We got Ken Dorsey, the new offensive coordinator in Buffalo, and what he's done is really have them throw the ball a lot more to the running backs. We've seen Devin Singletary get a career high in receptions. James Cook has made an appearance here and there. I think he'll get more important as the season goes on. Even Zach Moss had a game where he caught 6 passes. So I don't just assume that the wide receiver, whoever's out there, is going to get a ton of targets, but there's upside here. Look, he had a really strong preseason. He's shown good hands, and this is a guy with 4.4 speed. Was a prolific pass catcher at Boise State, over 1,100 yards last season. They drafted him for a reason because they like him. So I would say if you do have room on your bench, Shakir is definitely a strong hold. And then another rookie receiver that you might be interested in, by the name of Sky Moore. You probably know him because as soon as he was drafted by Kansas City, everyone went nuts for him in Dynasty rookie drafts. He was a first-round pick because of his landing spot. Well, you know what? There's kind of a two-edged sword there. On the one hand, yeah, Pat Mahomes at quarterback, Andy Reid offense sounds great for a receiver. But on the other hand, they're not just going to throw a guy like him into the fire. They have, even though it's not maybe as good of a receiving core as they've had before, of course, Tyreek Hill not there, but they got Juju, they got MVS, McCall Hardman is still there, and Justin Watson had a pretty good preseason. He's getting more snaps than Sky Moore, right? This is a rookie who's going to really have to learn this complicated system, and, it's going to take some time, as it does with all rookies. Finally, we're seeing him at least get on the field. The first 3 weeks, he wasn't barely even visible, and he hasn't done much. Well, he got 4 targets in week 4, 2 catches, which is better than the week 2 before that, week 2 and week 3, where he had 0 targets those previous 2 games. It's going to be a slow burn. But again, you want to get this guy before he starts to catch fire, because once he does, everyone's going to be picking him up. All it takes is that one big play for a touchdown, that one game where he gets several targets, and everyone will be on him just like they were right after the NFL draft. So again, you got room. You're looking for upside, especially when you want a guy to be hot. It's not right now. It's not the middle of the season. It's the end of the season. If Sky Moore really emerges and gains the trust of Pat Mahomes and, more important, Andy Reid, well, then you know what? He's going to be maybe even worth starting through the fantasy playoffs. So now is the time to stash him before he really gets involved. Okay, let's talk about some running backs. Start with Atlanta. Well, it's not going to be the guy that maybe you think it is. Tyler Algier, of course, is the hot pickup. He had a solid game this past week. Cordero Patterson, you probably know, is on the IR. But I'm not going to talk about a rookie this time. I'm going to talk about a boring veteran and a guy you probably forgot about because he's also been on IR. Damian Williams, he's set to come back after next week. And you know what? It wouldn't shock me at all if instead of Algier, Damian Williams becomes the lead back. We thought he might have an important role in this game, but of course, you know what? Week 1, got hurt. We haven't seen him since. So we're not really sure, but there was some suspicion that behind Patterson, Damian Williams would be the RB2, maybe even a timeshare. Well, with Patterson now sidelined, when Williams comes back, there's no guarantee that Algier holds on to a starting job. Maybe Algier struggles this week. Maybe they just prefer to have Williams in there. You know, it's not like Arthur Smith is the most creative play caller here and guy who's, going to go out of his way to start these rookies. I mean, he's not even targeting Kyle Pitts. Why not just give the ball to Damian Williams 15 to 20 times, right? So Damian Williams, we know he's been productive in spurts. He mainly benefited from being in Kansas City, right? He had those big playoff games. He's not a guy who's really done it over the course of the regular season. But of course, we're not talking about a guy who's going to be in your starting lineup all season. We're talking about a guy who, for the next few weeks, could fill that spot while Patterson is injured. A guy who could give you production if you need it right now. So Damian Williams might be the smart stash because, again, Algier struggles, gets hurt. There's not going to be a long leash for a guy who's a 5th-round pick, okay? So Damian Williams is definitely someone to look for if you're struggling at running back like a lot of us are. Let's get a little deeper and look to Cleveland. Okay, so Nick Chubb is tearing it up. Kareem Hunt's been a little quiet, but he is still there. He's got that job locked down. Right behind him is a guy we haven't heard from, Dearness Johnson. He wasn't even active in week 1, and a lot of suspicion that maybe either he or Hunt were going to be traded because, they just had too many bodies in the fold. Jerome Ford, the promising rookie who they just drafted, was kind of lurking. Kareem Hunt, is going to be free agent next year. Well, so far, they have not done anything with these guys, haven't made a move. But what if they do? I'm just saying, Denver now without Javonte Williams, they're hurting at running back. Injuries happen all the time. It is possible they decide to move on from Hunt and, try to get something from him before he leaves for free agency. It happens. Or maybe a team that's desperate, they decide, we'll take a chance on a Dearness Johnson. So there's a path for Johnson to either be the number 2 running back in Cleveland or somewhere else. Now, even if that doesn't happen, I will at least say this. Jerome Ford, the rookie I already talked about, he just hit IR. So Johnson is right now basically either a Chubb or Hunt injury away from being fantasy relevant by being part of a timeshare in Cleveland. Okay, this is kind of a speculative pick. Again, we're looking for stashes. We're looking for guys who could have a path. So Dearness Johnson has been productive, and we know this is a great offensive line and a team that can run the ball, all right? Once Deshaun Watson does come back in Week 12, well, you know what? This offense should just get better. Now let's go to a personal favorite of mine. That is Braxton Berrios from the U, and now he's with the Jets. Look, this is a guy who you kind of see pop up once in a while. He'll make a big play. Last week, he was throwing a touchdown to Zach Wilson. Late last year, he was catching touchdowns from Zach Wilson. Is there a thing with Berrios and Wilson? Maybe there is. Look, late last season, in 3 of the last 4 games, he didn't play in the season finale, but in 3 of the last 4 games, Berrios had at least 5 catches in those games. All right, this is a guy who does have some speed. He will get targeted more than you expect. I know the Jets right now look like they have 3 really good receivers, and they do, right? Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Corey Davis have all been productive here and there. There's room for a 4th guy, right? The Jets are a team that probably going to need to keep passing a lot. As you see, their defense puts them in that position. Wilson does have a connection with Berrios, so this is a deep league stash that can help you, with buys just around the corner, injuries happening. He's someone that you can kind of throw in there and hope for the best. Last but not least, I feel compelled to throw a tight end in there, but look, Isaiah Likely, you've heard of him. He's somebody who is emerging. He's kind of a receiver in a tight end's body, and he's in Baltimore, pretty much one of the most tight end friendly offenses that there is, but it might get even friendlier for him. So he did make some noise in week 2 with 4 catches for 43 yards. We know he's athletic. We know that there is a path for him to be relevant, but Baltimore doesn't pass enough, right? Well, they kind of have. I know they still want to commit to the run, but they're going to have to pass at times because their defense is still terrible. Likely now has a bigger path to relevance if Rashad Bateman is actually hurt, which as of right now, we don't really know. So he did nothing this past week, talking about week 4 when they lost to Buffalo, and a lot of people were curious. Maybe it's because he was playing bad. Maybe there's an injury. Well, what we heard so far is that he has a mid-foot sprain. Okay, there's no official diagnosis there. Nothing we know about. But look, if this is something that could hold Bateman out for multiple weeks, which is possible, who is going to step up? Devin Duvernay now becomes the number 1 receiver on that team. And I say that again, their number 1 receiver, it would be Devin Duvernay. Number 2 would be Demarcus Robinson. This is the same guy that the Chiefs let walk in free agency, and then the Raiders cut before the season, before the Ravens just kind of scooped him up. Then we got James Prochet, Tylan Wallace. I mean, the Ravens have made it clear, no offense to those guys, but they really don't care who they have at receiver, right? They made no effort to invest during the draft this year or into free agency. So likely is the one guy they did draft at tight end. By the way, the other guy, Charlie Kolar, he's on IR. So it would not surprise me at all if Bateman misses time, if likely becomes the number 2 target in this offense, okay? I mean, Duvernay, he's there, but look, he's kind of just more that deep vertical threat. Likely is the guy who's going to be across the middle of the field. So at least one of the top 3 targets. And that does bring value, especially at such a thin position. That makes him more important. So Isaiah Likely is a guy that, look, I'm not going to say you want to necessarily start him, but in this case, if you're desperate at tight end, if you've been hurt by Kyle Pitts, haven't we all? If you're still waiting on Dalton Schultz to do something, if you already dropped Dawson Knox, stash Likely and then see if his role grows enough that maybe you consider starting him. All right, those are the guys I'm looking at to stash now and beat the competition to the waiver wire. Check out our Week 5 playlist so that you can get our full complement of advice, start, sit, trade advice, waiver wire, everything you need to dominate in fantasy.